Dear students, welcome to my classroom of Early Medieval India. Today I am going to teach you the agrarian development in early medieval India and the crop pattern. I must say that you should know the importance of early medieval period in Indian history. Why this particular period is important? Here we should say that early medieval period is a period which is something from where we can get various ideas related to the cultural transformation which took place at that time. I mean to say that it was a period during that time the Arabs, they came to our country, they invaded and they established their kingdom in the Sindh region. So it was the beginning of the intrusion by the Islamic culture to our country. And this culture was not only visible in the field of politics, it also transformed the society, the economy, and the psyche of the people. I must say that during the early medieval period, we can witness the conjunction between the ancient period and the medieval period. So, it was a bridge between the ancient and the medieval period. During the ancient period, we have seen the Hindu rulers mostly. Though in the northwestern frontier, we had the Greek rulers as well. But from the early medieval period onwards, the Muslims, they tried to establish their power in our country and gradually they succeeded. It was a period during the early medieval times when we have seen that how the society was facing a lot of problems and crises. I'm talking about the social tensions. Which was also visible in the religious texts where the Brahmanical religion was in a very crucial stage. It was a time to revive Brahmanism. It was a time to think about how we can get back the glory of the Brahmanical religion. Because the Protestant religions were there along with the other religions by the tribes, by the marginalized, and it was a time when we have also witnessed people gradually started developing their interests for Islam. Because in Islam, we do not find that kind of discrimination based on caste and creed. So, the people especially who were the untouchables or the Sudras or who belonged to the lower castes of the Hindu social hierarchy, gradually they started showing interest for Islam. On the other hand, it was also true that the Muslim rulers, they sometimes they follow the policy of conversion. But my argument is these social tensions, which were at that time at the rudimentary stage, but definitely helped us to understand how the society was about to change or about to transform. It was a time the Muslim rulers, they were trying to conquer our country, though that process started gradually. It was a time, a kind of cultural transformation or social change was knocking on the door. It was a time when we can witness feudalism emerged as a system to maintain land revenue structure. It was a time when we can see economy, religion and society all were linked with each other to portray or to express that particular social tension or crisis which was the essence of early medieval period. In early medieval period, we have seen that how in the field of religion, the concept of Kali Yuga born. So apart from that, we can also witness like how the traditional Hindu writers, through their writings, they were trying to give importance on the revival of the Hindu religion. So it was a time when we witnessed proliferation of caste. It was a time when we witnessed the Sudras, they were increasing in number as the people from the tribals or the subcastes were also being a part of it. That means they were also getting included as Sudras in the Hindu social hierarchy. It was a time when we have seen like how the tantric religion started taking a definite shape and also was becoming very much popular, especially for the people who were marginalized or who were belonging from the lower caste. Even women were also getting important place in this particular religion of Tantrism. Why I am saying all this? Because this will help us to understand the time or the society. Now I would like to say something about the land system or the land revenue system or the agrarian economy which existed during this particular period. If I would like to start with, I must say from 600 AD to 1206 AD, we have seen a lot of changes took place in the field of economy. It was a time when we had the traditional ancient Indian economy, but definitely with a new component. That component was in a subtle stage in the ancient period, but that particular component took a much more mature shape in the early medieval period. I am talking about the origin or the genesis of a particular system in India which later became very much important to estimate the economy. I am talking about feudalism. I am talking about Indian feudalism. In Europe also we have seen feudalism. Feudalism emerged in Europe. But in India also, when we discuss about land system, about land revenue system, about agrarian economy, definitely in the early medieval period, we witnessed feudalism. When we talk feudalism, we need to understand that how it developed. As the early medieval period also being indicated as a phase which was experiencing anarchy and social tensions. So it is very much evident from the inscriptions that the rulers, they wanted some kind of security. And the rulers, they distributed the lands to their subordinates. And the subordinates also, by the virtue of giving security to the rulers, they got the right of collecting land revenue. We also found the intermediaries. So it was a system where we find dependency was the essence behind the same. And it was a system which also talked exploitation. The king, the feudal lords, the subordinates, the intermediaries, they all started exploiting the peasants to a great extent. So it was a time when we can see, if we would like to apply the Marxian approach, the beginning of class struggle and class exploitation. So the early medieval economy was something which represented class exploitation or class struggle. I must say, during that time, land grants became very important. From where do we get information about land grants? From the inscriptions, from the early medieval religious texts, we get information about land grants. There were various types of land grants existed during that period. Agrahara, Brahmadeya, and in my previous lectures I have mentioned about all this. The land grants to the religious institutions, to the religious people individually, and to the secular institutions or to the secular people, all were common during this particular period. Not only the kings, they used to give land grants. The queens or the eminent female personalities of the royal families were also associated or engaged with this particular process. So land grants became important, and it also made sub-infeudation and also fragmentation of lands. There were many land owners, as I have just mentioned about sub-infeudation, and also fragmentation of land created more pressure on the peasants. I must say, it was a time that when we have witnessed how the religious institutions, they started behaving like the landlords, because they got the right to collect revenue and also they got the right to cultivate. They were not the people who were working as the farmers. Rather, they hired or they employed the farmers or the cultivators who were having various status. So it was a time when we also witnessed a lot of improvement in the field of technology. How technology became important during that time? Because technology was something which helped people to grow further in the field of civilization. We have seen in the early medieval period, technology or the invention of various tools, either made of iron or copper, helped to have urbanization, to have more lands for cultivation. Apart from that, technology also helped to have irrigation, that how to make the arable land or the sterile land cultivable. So irrigation and the construction of canals, both these two things were very important during the early medieval period. We have seen in various regions people they adopted various techniques for the growth and development of agriculture. Here we witness something which is known as regional variation. What were the agricultural developments we witness in South India, perhaps in North India or in Bengal, those things were not the same, because the people from these regions, they adopted different techniques to grow in this particular field. We had witnessed a lot of experimentations that also helped the growth of market economy, that also helped the growth of the people who were the traders. But definitely the Vaishyas who used to trade during this particular period, they were started getting the status of Sudras, because overseas trade during the early medieval period was prohibited. So these people, they became the Sudras and they started cultivation. By this way, we got a large number of people who were engaged in agriculture. That also helped the system feudalism or feudalizing the agriculture more smoothly. So it was a time when we also witness various patterns or various types of crops which started to grow in our country. Now I would like to highlight on that particular crop pattern which we used to have in early medieval India. Now I would like to highlight about the various types of crops which we had in early medieval period in India. Here I would like to refer from my slides that foreign authors, especially the Arab geographers, were much impressed by the flourishing agricultural condition in early medieval times and the diversity of crops. Paddy was undoubtedly the most important crop. Some villages in southeastern Bengal with Boraka name endings were probably so called for the cultivation of Boro variety of paddy. The Sunya Purana enlists 50 types of paddy in early medieval Bengal, which was also particularly famous for sugar cane plantations. Pundra or North Bengal being well known for quality sugar cane. The term Poundra grown in Pundra became a synonym for sugar cane. There was expansion on the plantations of coconut, betel and areca nuts, betel leaf and cotton, especially in the littoral tracts and the Deccan. Indigo plantation, closely allied to the textile production, seems to have been well established in Gujarat. The far south figures very prominently in the account of foreigners as an area rich in spices. The most frequently mentioned spice was the pepper from Malabar. Some improvements in the cultivation of oil seeds may logically be inferred in the light of increased number of references to oil presses, ghanaka, and oil men, tailika. Inscriptions also record availability of green vegetables as exchangeable commodities. In early medieval Bengal, there were plenty of natural resources of water enriched by monsoon rains and riverine sources. Early medieval inscriptions from Rajasthan contain significant information about the use of water wheels or araghattas, also called ghanta yantras, as a regular device to produce irrigational water. A 10th century AD sculpture from Rajasthan portrays the vertical rotary motion of the wheel to which were attached small buckets or pots. These pots would go around with the turning of the wheel and fetch up water from below. The sculpture also depicts the employment of workers for turning the wheel and fetching water. In Gujarat too, early medieval inscriptions and textual materials are replete with references to Vapi or Vavi. While the term Vapi has been known for a long time in Sanskrit literature as any reservoir, in the early medieval context, they connoted step wells excavated to a great depth to tap the ground water. A steady extension of the margin of cultivation, the spread of irrigation work, and changes in the market demand led to changes in pattern of land use. In the Karnataka area, apart from rice, there was an increasing emphasis on various types of millets such as Priyangu, Ragi, Jowar and Bajra. Also increasingly grown were inferior varieties of rice. There was an increase in the cultivation of cash crops, sugarcane, betel leaves and areca nuts, coconuts, oranges and spices such as black pepper and ginger. I would like to say something about how the particular system of agriculture or land grant used to function during that time. As I have already discussed about the various crops which we have seen during the early medieval period, like how they used to grow and how the technology or the various skills helped to have those crops, or sometimes we can say like that helped somehow for the growth and development of cash crops as well. The various crops which were produced in early medieval period that also helped to have commercialization of agriculture, where we find that how these particular crops like betel, leaf and others, they helped trade and commerce. This commercialization of agriculture was later continued in the medieval period as well, when we have seen like how the Mughal rulers, they developed fruit trade and they constructed various gardens. Coming back to the early medieval period again, to understand the psyche of exploitation. As agriculture flourished, the rich peasants or the feudal lords, they got benefits to a great extent. But the torture or the exploitation of the cultivators or the rural people or the ordinary mass was very much. Ranabir Chakraborty wanted to highlight to a particular point that the exploitation which was faced by the rural people, and that exploitation was by the kings or by the intermediaries. This particular situation compelled them to have their own villages which were more or less autonomous. And in those villages, the headmen, they were the authorities. They used to collect the revenue and also they were responsible to manage the surplus. They were the people who used to communicate with the king or the revenue collectors. So it was a situation where we find that people, they started getting united. I'm talking about the villages. But in the Brahmadaya villages, the villagers, they were exempted from giving any kind of tax. So we have to look into that matter as well. I would also like to highlight about rural tensions. In various places in Kashmir, in Bengal, if I talk about the Kaivarta rebellion, and also in other places of India, during that time, we have seen how the peasants, they fought for their rights. They were backed up by the village headmen or by their particular community. Sometimes they fought against the landlords or the kings, or sometimes the landlords were also in their groups to express their grief and anxiety over the issue of tax or collection of land revenue. So it was a time where we can witness class struggle and class exploitation as opined by Marx, and I have also mentioned about it earlier how all these are trying to take a definite shape in the Indian society, which are also the features of feudalism. But according to some scholars, in India, in early medieval period, there was no feudalism. It was a time when we can witness the growth of autonomous peasant societies. So we need to think from that perspective as well. I would like to conclude my lecture by saying that crop pattern or the varieties in that particular regard helps us to understand the technological advancements which we had during that period. Unfortunately, we did not usher any industrial revolution in our country, but technological advancements definitely helped the agriculture to flourish and also feudalism to grow. Whether there was feudalism or the presence of the autonomous peasant societies, definitely we need to work on this particular discourse, but the exploitation was everywhere. So, if we would like to define the early medieval economy in one sentence, then I must say that it was an economy which led towards exploitation of the peasants. Thank you.